Hey guys, welcome to Daily Insider. Stephanie Otey here. Kevin is out today, but I'm taking over for tonight's games. We got NBA back. All-Star break is officially over. So to go ahead and talk about some fun props and bets, I'm bringing on my good friend Ariel Epstein, the prop queen herself from Yahoo Sports. What is up?
Hey, Steph, thanks for having me on.
So pumped to have you on. You also work on MLB Network, NBA TV. We may have a delayed baseball season, and I know you and I watched the Super Bowl together. Right when my team lost, you had the Rams, I had Bengals. I was so upset. I literally ordered a glass of champagne to celebrate, and then things just went completely wrong. But I remember telling you, I'm so sad, not only for the Bengals, but we don't have football anymore, and you just couldn't wait for baseball. But do you think we're going to have a delayed start here?
Delayed start, possibly. A season, yes. There's going to be a season. The thing is, baseball makes most of their money anyway in the playoffs. That's why you're not going to see so much of a rush necessarily to get this beginning part of the season off and running. Now, granted, you still lose money. You lose money in ticket sales. Opening day is such a huge deal in the baseball world. I'm a little concerned now that we're getting closer and closer. We are 4 days away. February 28th, the last day of February, is the deadline for getting the season started on time. Clearly, spring training's not going to start on time. I hope for baseball's sake that they start to get things figured out. There's a lot of players down there in Florida trying to get this deal done. It's just a bad look for the sport, and for a sport that got me in love with sports in general, it pains me to see everyone giving it such a bad reputation for what's going on.
Mm-hmm. We saw this not even too long ago. They also had a delayed start with COVID, all of that. It's hard to see, an agreement not reached. And do you think this deadline is all that hard? They're saying verbatim, we need to reach an agreement by Monday. Otherwise, we're gonna have a delayed start to season. But how hard do you think that Monday deadline is?
It's tough because if you look to ESPN's Jeff Passan, he was tweeting out all yesterday this huge thread about the problem going on and what's the holdup. And the holdup's basically all about taxing these teams for going over their quote unquote salary cap, which isn't necessarily a salary cap. Go to Jeff Passan's tweets and go read that thread. It's really informative as to what the holdup is. Taxing these owners for going over their salary cap is essentially what it comes down to. And that's what's going to make this all difficult. It's hard for us on the outside to really say. That's why I just have to sit here and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we got some games back. All-Star break is over. What were you up to during the All-Star break? I know you're heading down south. You're going to go to a concert. I'm so jealous. But what were you up to during All-Star break? I know you're deep into NBA, but did you get some time off?
No, not really any time off except Monday for President's Day, since it is a federal holiday. I did just get to go home to my parents and see my dogs and just kind of sit around and do nothing, give myself the mental break. My hope is that if baseball does come back, that I'm going to be extremely overwhelmed with basketball, baseball, March Madness, etc. That it was a really nice few days to just not have to worry about refreshing box scores all weekend.
Yeah, definitely needed the break. But hey, we got basketball back tonight. Want to look at where we're at the midway through season. Big trades were made, and I'm curious what your take is on how that would change maybe some futures, like the Harden trade to Philly. Do you think that might help the 76ers take claim over the Bucks? Right now they're favored at they're plus 350 to win the East. Did you think the Harden trade changes your perspective on that?
It definitely shook things up in the Eastern Conference, considering the conference is just so close already. Teams like the Miami Heat, who were banged up throughout the entire first half of the season, were leading the way in the Eastern Conference. Everyone was separated by anywhere between 2 to 6 games in the top 6. Adding an extra all-star to Philly is exactly what they needed next to Joel Embiid. I'm a little concerned about depth. There are teams that have way more players. However, having James Harden and Joel Embiid together can be really tough for anybody in the Eastern Conference to go up against. I know that a lot of the question marks were surrounding if both of them could share the ball. Harden's been one of the assist leaders in the last couple of years in all of the NBA. He could dish it out to Embiid. The question is, can anybody in the NBA ever be happy with where they are? James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons, everybody just seems to want out of their teams. Is this a good fit? We'll have to wait and see. For now, it looks as if James Harden and Joel Embiid agreed to playing together. It's going to make the Sixers better because even though the Sixers had decent amounts of depth with Maxey and Curry, etc., James Harden is the extra all-star that they really needed to make an NBA championship push.
Yeah. So do you have a future on the Eastern Conference yet? I mean, after that trade, I do like the 76ers right now.
To be honest, I hate actually betting it. I can go and tell you wherever I see the value. I just hate betting anything in the NBA futures market, especially when it comes to the Eastern and Western conferences. You see
Mhm.
so many shifts like this. And again, the Eastern Conference is wide open. To me, there's not much value when it comes to betting a conference winner. I'd rather go bet the NBA champion. If you get your conference winner in the NBA championship, you're setting yourself up for a really good hedge situation. I like
Mhm.
Miami at 10-1. I like the Sixers at 7-1. Those would be the two teams that I would take. The Western Conference is either going to Phoenix or Golden State. There's no
Mhm.
value on either of those teams. Eastern Conference is where the value is because it looks like it could be shaken up at any given moment in the second half, and it's so close between all these teams. I'm looking at the value on both those teams. Sixers, we just talked about. Miami has a lot of veteran experience. Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler were just in an NBA championship a few years ago with their head coach, Eric Spoelstra, who's been in NBA Finals and an NBA Finals champion
Mhm.
before. That's why I like Miami at 10-1 for value too.
Yeah, I mean, they're leading the East right now. But I look at the West and it is very narrow. I mean, the Warriors are plus 425, Suns are plus 450. Yeah, you're right. They're very close. It could really go either way. But do you think the addition of Draymond Green when he gets back, do you think that will help the Warriors take over the Suns?
Take over the Suns is a tough stretch because right now you're looking at injuries to both. You've got Draymond Green, who's been out for Golden State. That is a huge killer to their defense. Phoenix is now without their point guard with Chris Paul out for 6 to 8 weeks with his finger injury. That's going to be a huge. And the thing is with Chris Paul, it's not even about his on the court presence when it comes to like physically. It's Chris Paul as a leader. Last year in the playoffs, Chris Paul was injured, and the Suns said, we just want him on the floor because he helps to lead the team on the floor. We don't even care if he physically can't perform. It's more the mentals that Chris Paul provides for Phoenix. Now, once you get Chris Paul back, in addition to Draymond Green for Golden State, it's just a good series overall. It's hard for me, again, to predict which one comes out on top because it's going to be a best of 7 series most likely. Draymond Green's just going to be a huge add to the Golden State defense. That's why when he comes back, you're going to have to really look at Golden State in a different way than you are right now.
Yeah, and I think how those play out will also affect the MVP. Right now, Joel Embiid plus 140. He's playing lights out, but then with that Harden trade, it might impact, his stat sheet. Then you got Nikola Jokic plus 300. So Steph Curry's at plus 110 or 100. So like, I think that if the Warriors go further out, like that could help his odds much better. The value's there right now. But when you look at how these teams will play out, what does that do with your MVP futures?
MVP futures are really tough just because of injuries. What we saw last year is that it all came down to durability. Now, granted, Nikola Jokic played incredible as well. It's just there's certain players like LeBron James, Joel Embiid that had great seasons. They just were hurt and missed a huge chunk of the year. Nikola Jokic didn't really miss any games last season. That's what scares me with Joel Embiid as the front runner right now. Yeah, okay, he's front runner at the halfway point of the year. So was LeBron James last season. Then he got hurt right before the All-Star break, and his MVP chances absolutely plummeted. The same thing could happen to Joel Embiid. Now, I hope it doesn't because he's a great player. He's well overdue for getting an MVP. He's been playing so well. The Sixers are never where they are today without Embiid leading the way the last few months. If he stays healthy, the MVP should be his. The question is, can he stay healthy with all his knee injuries and back injuries that he's been suffering through for the last few years?
Yeah, so you advise not taking an MVP pick right now. It changes so much over time.
Again, I know it sounds like a cop out. There are some other places in the NBA futures market that I could see having some value. The MVP has value in it because anyone could get hurt at any given time. Steph Curry has way more value now than he
Yeah.
did a few months ago. A few months ago, I think it was back in December, I was on NBA TV. The question was, is Steph Curry winning MVP? Is it locked up? Is it done? He was favored by minus 250 or something crazy like that. I said, no, it's not done. There's always value
Yeah.
in this market because anyone could get hurt. Steph Curry didn't get hurt. He just isn't playing as well as he was the first couple of months of the year. So much changes. If you do see a player that you like, you'll be able to find value in this market. I just hate betting it because there's way too much fluctuation.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see Steph Curry at that number, and it looks good for right now because I do think the Warriors will go on a run. But there are two games tonight out west between the top teams in the West that have a 10-point margin. So Golden State, do you think that they will cover a 9.5 in Portland? They Warriors lost 4 to the last 5 before the All-Star break. Blazers have some injuries. Have you looked at this one much? I mean, a 10-point spread looks pretty steep.
I did not bet this game. I stayed away. Again, first game off the All-Star break. You've got someone like Golden State who's going to throw some of their starters out there. Are all your starters going to play full minutes? Portland is a bad team. They have no defense. They've been without Damian Lillard. They lost CJ McCollum. And now you're going to go up against the Golden State Warriors. The problem is, on paper, it looks like Golden State should crush this team.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, is there a backdoor cover situation? Saw it happen a few weeks ago with the Phoenix Suns. They were absolutely crushing in one of their games. I forget who they were facing. Phoenix was destroying their opponent, and they were covering a 9.5-point spread the entire way. Then in the last few minutes of the game, they took out their starters, and there was a backdoor cover.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I stayed away from this one. There are other spots on the board that are probably better and provide more consistency for who's on the floor.
Yeah. So another one with a 10-point spread. Suns in Oklahoma. Both teams are pretty shorthanded. They have injuries. So I look at OKC. They're clearly beyond this season. They're focusing on development this year. They have the fourth worst record. So it doesn't look like they're trying to make a run. A 10-point spread up against the Suns. How are you feeling with this one? I mean, the Thunder, I know you look at matchups a lot. They've allowed around 2 rebounds over the league average. I know you got some props in this one. So that's what I look at is the matchup here. What are you seeing that stands out with this one?
I see rebounds. Rebounds is where Oklahoma City has struggled defensively. They're their worst rebounding defense in the league. I look to the center of the Suns, DeAndre Ayton, over 10.5 rebounds. The only issue with this one is that it could be a potential blowout. The Suns are also on the first leg of a back-to-back. That scares me a lot for Ayton's playing time. The number is good, though. DeAndre Ayton's key number is 12. He's going up against, again, the worst rebounding defense in the league. And I've looked at some of the centers that have gone up against Oklahoma City. They're putting up anywhere between 12 to 16 rebounds a game against the Thunder. As long as Ayton plays decent amount of minutes, I look to his over 10.5 rebounds.
Yeah, I thought about that too. So a lot of people are liking that over 10.5 rebounds. I was taking him 26.5 points and rebounds. So I'm combining them two there, but I mean, I think that he'll put up big points, like you said, averaging around 12. That's like his hot number. But I look at the Nuggets and Sacramento. I think that the Nuggets are kind of an underrated team. Do you think that, people are sleeping on the Nuggets this season? They came in and like they have an MVP candidate. I mean, they're not getting looked at like they should be in certain areas. They're sitting at 6th in the West right now.
It's because they have two way more well-rounded teams in the Western Conference in Phoenix and Golden State. Unfortunately, the Nuggets offensively just don't necessarily have what it takes to outpower those teams, and defensively they're okay. They're just more of a 15th rank. Like when you look at their stats, they rank anywhere between 10 to 15 as opposed to 1 to 10. Now, where I'm looking for the game tonight, Denver-Sacramento, is the first half over. Denver actually does lead the league in first half points, averaging just over 58 points per game. I'm very nervous for this Kings defense because they do have the reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic up against them. He could destroy this team in the paint. Sacramento allowing the third most first half points, just over 58 points per first half. Go take that first half over between these two, considering defense is going to be at a minimum, and Nikola Jokic is going to eat in the paint against one of the bottom 10 defenses in the paint, the Kings.
The interesting about this game is that they play in Sacramento tonight. Saturday, they go over to Denver. They play again. Do you think that the game's going to change much after, going back to back, just switching locations?
I have to go look at it. Every team's different. The best way to approach that is to go look at the teams that are in that position. Let's just say in this case, the Kings and the Nuggets. Go look at how they've played when they've faced the same team twice in a row. Go look at that second leg. See what changes. Sometimes someone's on, let's say Nikola Jokic. Sometimes the first game, he's more offensive. Then the second game, he'll play more defensive. If you could find a trend like that, then you're golden. then that's the way to go look at it. I haven't looked at it yet because I'm just trying to get through today. I would take that approach though, and looking at how teams play the same team twice back to back, not necessarily 2 days in a row, just 2 games in a row against the same opponent, see where those trends may lie.
That'll be an interesting one to pick up on for Saturday. All right, lots going on out west. Let's look at one in the east. Atlanta Hawks, Chicago Bulls. Atlanta has been so inconsistent lately. Bulls are, they're on a roll right now. Hawks are, I look at how they were up straight up 4-4. They, and against the spread in the past 2 weeks leading up to the All-Star break. Chicago on a 5-game win streak. Do you think the market's overrated Atlanta because of that Eastern Conference run they went on, or do you think there's value in them here?
They haven't necessarily overestimated Atlanta. Their odds have been pretty long all year. They're 3.5-point dogs, and the total is sitting at what I see, 237. Geez, that number went skyrocketed overnight. The number opened at 230.5. Then it went to 234.5 yesterday, and now it's at 237.5 today. Yesterday, I absolutely loved when I recorded my podcast about today's games on Yahoo Sportsbook Daily. I said, I love the Atlanta first half over 57.5 points. I love Atlanta's team total over 115.5 points. Unfortunately, those numbers are not there anymore. You've got to take an 116.5 for team total, and the Hawks' first half is 59.5. That number's too high. I'd rather lean to the team total for the full game instead of the first half. 59.5 is very high. However, Atlanta's been playing really well in the first half. They've been averaging 59 points per first half in their last 10. Chicago's allowing an average of 58 points per first half in their last 10. If you want to take the sample of Atlanta versus Chicago, they've played each other twice this year, and Atlanta put up 63 and 53 points in the first half against them. I do like, though, for an Atlanta team total, because like you were saying, underestimated by the books, someone's going to have to do with Atlanta at 3.5-point dogs. They're going to have to outperform the books in some way to cover. And I could see that being offensively, because defense is going to be at a real minimum in this one.
Yeah. Do you think Zach LaVine has any effect on this? I mean, Chicago's dealing with health issues. He gets a spot on the All-Star team, doesn't get the rest. Do you think that has any impact here?
No, because the impact is more on the defensive side of the ball. No Lonzo Ball, no Alex Caruso for Chicago. Zach LaVine's just providing more points if he does play. It looks like he is going to play. It's just more points. It's not really so much about defense. That's why this game doesn't really change much for my outlook on it with him or without him.
Yeah. So I know you love your props. So what do you have going on tonight? I know we talked about DeAndre Ayton in the Suns game. Where else are you taking some props for tonight?
I took the over 26.5 points, rebounds, and assists for the Cleveland Cavaliers center, Jared Allen. I was going back and forth between him and Evan Mobley. Darius Garland, their point guard's out tonight for some reason. I have no idea why, considering he participated in All-Star game activities. Whatever. Jared Allen has gone over 26.5 points, rebounds, and assists in 5 of his last 7 games without Garland. He's also gone over it in 7 of his last 10 when up against the defense, bottom 10 in points and rebounds allowed. The Detroit Pistons are bottom 10 in every statistical defensive category. I see Allen just demolishing this team with no big men in Detroit.
Do you have a bet on that game or just the props?
Just the props. Props are probably where I'm going to be focusing a lot more on in the NBA. And another prop that I looked at too, and it's a trend that's really profitable for me, looking at shooting guards against the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have been bottom 10 all year defending against guards, especially the shooting guard position. You look back to the last 10 games against Boston. Atlanta's Bogdan Bogdanovic had 26 points off the bench. Miami's Max Strus had 27 points. Charlotte's Terry Rozier had 23. And Detroit's Hamidou Diallo had 21. I'm looking at the over for either the net shooting guard Seth Curry, 15.5 points, or I'm going to look to their shooting guard off the bench, Cam Thomas. Thomas has been so good, averaging just over 24 points per game in his last 8. He's also put up at least 17 in his last 3 home games. That means he's without Kyrie Irving and James Harden. And without Kyrie Irving tonight in Brooklyn, someone's got to step up. Probably going to be the shooting guard position. I haven't seen Cam Thomas props out yet. I'm still waiting on them. He's an underrated bench player, but they do post his props. If I get a low number on him, I'll probably take that over. I do like Seth Curry too, though.
Yeah, Seth Curry's another underrated guy. I feel like he gets overlooked. Like when they made that trade clearly the Nets saw value in that. Do you think he'll be an impact player there? Do you think that there was a lot of value in getting him there in New York?
He's good for a playoff push. He's going to put up some points, especially when you get back someone like Kevin Durant or Ben Simmons coming into the mix. It's exactly the position he'll be in when he was in Philly. He's that second, third, fourth player that any given night he could go off for an extra 23 points for your team, which is super helpful for depth in the playoffs. It's all about him facing a team that's bad against the 3 too. If you get a bad 3-point defense against Steph Curry, then he could go off and put up 5-6 3-pointers in a game, and that's when you're going to see him being valuable to the Nets.
Yeah, I covered him in Dallas. He's very well liked. Guys love him. I think he'll be a good addition. So one prop that I don't even like. I hated betting Devin Booker props. I never did well on them. But tonight I'm looking at him over 27.5 points. He averages 25.5 points per game this season. 27 in February alone. Scored over 30 points in the last 5 games against Oklahoma. Are you with me on this one? Do you think over 27.5? Do you see value there?
I like that stat that he's had over 30 points against Oklahoma City in his last 5. That means that the matchup works well for him. I don't mind it. I didn't really research it. I was looking way more towards the big men because the way that I handicap by looking at teams that are bottom 10 in statistical defensive categories. It looks as if the Thunder rebounding is their biggest issue. The points allowed isn't necessarily where Oklahoma City has struggled. However, Devin Booker can go off for he could go off for 30 plus on any given night, no matter who it is, even against the best defenses in the league. I have no issue with you taking that over, especially with the trends of how well he's played against Oklahoma City. My only concern for anything in Phoenix tonight, even my DeAndre Ayton prop, is playing time with the Suns having to play again tomorrow.
Yeah, and Chris Paul is out with the thumb injury. So, my thought was, Booker would step up. The Thunder, they're allowing 107.8 points per game as well. You pointed about them, their defensive rating. So when you're looking at these props, is that where you start out each night? You just look at the bottom defensive performing players or teams and making props against them?
Pretty much. I look at the teams that are bottom 10 in every statistical category, points, rebounds, and assists. Then I look to the players on the other side that are good at it. I also make sure that I look at the last 10 games for each team. Sometimes the statistics and the averages can be a little misconceiving. I'm using that word really wrong. Anyway, I really end up looking at these last 10. I don't know why my English is off right now. I do look at a lot of these different teams though, and how in the last 10 games, certain positions can be excelling, but also you could look to teams like Oklahoma City, let's just say, and this is a hypothetical. I remember this from last year against certain teams. You look at certain teams, the last 10 games, and you'll say, wow, this team's one of the worst rebounding defenses in the league. Then you look, no one's really putting up 10 or more rebounds against them. It's just that a lot of different players are putting up 7 or more rebounds. They'll have 7 to 9 rebounds for 3 or 4 different starters. That's when you start looking at the players that are the second and third leading rebounders on the team, as opposed to the leading rebounder on the team. You could find value that way too, just by looking at, is it because one player has a lot of rebounds against them, or is it because multiple players have decent amounts of rebounds against them, if that makes sense?
So rather than taking a player that you like to bet on frequently, you rather would look at the bad performing team. So you don't like to take you go on the negative side first, like who's performing badly. And then
I'm totally a pessimist. I love taking advantage of weak teams.
Yeah. All right. So what got you into the props then? So, because you got into the props game much earlier than everyone else.
What got me into props is I, first of all, was working in New Jersey in 2019 when I first started in the media side of sports betting. New Jersey really opened up the props market. Vegas still isn't that into the props market yet. They don't have as many options as we do here on the East Coast. Everyone else was such a sharp bettor when I first got into this. I wasn't sharp. I was just recreationally betting. While I was learning how to be more of a sharp bettor and think more like these smart bettors, I looked at what they weren't doing, and that was focusing on the props market. I knew props. I knew how to handicap them because I love daily fantasy. I love fantasy. It's how I got started in sports betting in general. It was like my gateway drug. I was playing fantasy sports in 6th grade. I knew how to handicap players. I knew how to handicap them in the games. I just was able to apply it to the props market when no one else really was doing it yet.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you got in there early, and I learned a lot of props from you just when I got into the betting game. I like that strategy though, starting with who's performing badly and going against them. Because I started on the flip side. Like Giannis was a guy I love to bet on, and you're right. Like it really matters against the matchup rather than really the player, yeah, but
And the
like
big names are hard too. Any of the big names like a Giannis,
yeah.
LeBron, Luka Doncic, their numbers are going to be so spot on. You have to find players like last year. One of my favorites that I found was the power forward on the Utah Jazz, Royce O'Neal. I loved betting his rebounds
Mhm.
props. Everyone was hysterically laughing at me that Royce
Mhm.
O'Neal was who I kept ratting throughout the playoffs last year. I also was ratting the power forward of the Hawks, John Collins, and his over in the
Yep.
second half of games. He was more of a second half player than first half. Same thing for the Utah Jazz center, Rudy Gobert. Those are some of the trends that I was able to find, but of course, Gobert's a bigger name. It's just, you've got to find some of these hidden gems. Cam
Yeah.
Thomas is one of those right now for the Brooklyn Nets. He's been going over his points props a ton in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah, because like getting guys off the bench, sometimes you can't find a prop on them. I know you don't want to say which books, but like, do you find that certain books you get more of those kind of off options and props? Like you can really rely on certain books with those types of options.
Most of these books, especially here in the New York area now, New Jersey, etc., most of them are pretty much giving you the same market. It's just about finding the numbers. Certain books
Yeah.
are sharper, or I shouldn't say sharper. Certain books lean more towards overs and certain lean more towards unders. Some books like to protect against unders more, so they'll have a higher number. Or excuse me, they like to protect against unders, so their props will be lower. Some of the books don't care, and they always are the ones that are going to be ahead. So I do see the difference in books based on the number more than it is about the market.
Yeah. So with these props, do you parlay much?
No,
I
no,
know.
I hate that.
I
No.
tried to stay away from it. I had one hit and I just was like riding that wave and it never came back. But yeah, I think sticking with props is a good option. You get to look at many games and you follow the trend because you find them earlier on. Like you'll catch on to one and then eventually they'll ride that wave. So finding them early is a good spot. Like the Seth Curry thing, like I think he's underrated now. I feel like it's not going to last long. I feel like they're going to find value in him. Are there any guys that you're watching right now that you have eyes on?
Ooh, I mentioned Cam Thomas. He was the surprise. I'd have to think about that now. You caught me off guard, but he's definitely the number one right now on my list for someone
Mhm.
to keep an eye on and try to ride this streak out. There are definitely a few more that are not coming to mind right away. But Cam Thomas is certainly at the top of my list at the moment for players that are completely underrated by the book.
Yeah, and like you just like hope to ride the wave as long as you can. I hopefully the
Yeah.
book don't catch on and start snagging the value from
Well,
you.
it's not going to be a trend anymore once Kevin Durant's back or if Ben Simmons is on the floor. At least for now, you could go look to Cam Thomas for the Nets until things really shake up. That's where the second half gets really tricky because the
Mhm.
second half, you're going to get players coming back now from injuries after sitting out for a month. This is so typical NBA. All-stars get hurt. They don't play them because at least they give them through the all-star break. You get the extra rest. Now you're going to ease them back into the rotation. Then you're going to get into the last couple of months of the year where a lot shakes up. You've got new trades. You've got new players. You've got new rotations. You've got players back from injury. It gets really difficult this
Mhm.
stretch. Then once you get to May and June, when you get the NBA playoffs starting up, it starts to change because these players have now been playing for longer.
Mhm. And we're approaching March. I know you mainly do NBA, but do you look into college games? Like, will you be in on that come March?
March Madness, I'll get into.
Yeah.
College basketball hasn't always been my strong suit. When I used to work at Sports Grid and I was doing a show for 3 hours a day, I did get a lot more into it. There's just so many teams, so many conferences. It's really tough to get a handle on everybody. Everyone's best advice when talking college hoops is to focus on one or two conferences that you could really just get to know really well.
Yeah.
Then you can go and apply that later on. Then, of course, the field gets smaller and smaller as you get through March Madness. Just that's people's approach season long in college basketball. Focus on a couple of conferences that you can really get to know well, and that shortens your field down to knowing how good or bad certain teams are against certain types of opponents.
Yeah. So when you head into it, because a lot of us will look at college hoops only in March. So what's your strategy going into that? Do you usually just kind of look at those two conferences that you tend to focus on and go with those teams? Like when you're making your bracket. So many people have different strategies. Like the people who do the best, they'll choose mascot colors or something.
Yeah. No, it's always, that's why I hate Super Bowls and March Madness with people that don't know what they're
you
talking
did well
about.
in the Super Bowl though. I think most of yours hit.
Well, I meant by the point of I hate watching or betting with people that don't know what they're talking about, because you're right. All these public bettors or people that don't know anything and just bet certain teams because of the color of their uniform, they all end up doing well. I know so many times that people do better than me in brackets, and I sat there for hours trying to figure it out. These people completely beat me, and I said, well, whatever. It's all a toss up. That's why March Madness is great in mayhem. But the approach really is to Ken Palm. Ken Palm ratings are so good. Everyone uses the Ken Palm ratings, and try to go sign up for a subscription. Make sure to go check out his numbers. He's had really good numbers about averages and how certain teams play against certain other teams. There's just a lot of algorithms and numbers involved. If you're a numbers person, Ken Palm is the place to go to help you out March Madness.
So do you look at algorithms or the models or anything like that, or do you mainly focus on the matchups?
Well, it's all the same. The algorithms and all that stuff is part of the matchups. It's taking in all of those different stats and considering how good a defense is against certain teams. Like, for example, is this team going to live and die by the 3? Last year, just Syracuse comes to mind. They live and died by the 3. They were living and dying by Buddy Boeheim. How well do certain teams do against good 3-point shooting teams? That's where you have to find your edge, because if Syracuse lives and dies by the 3 and they're up against one of the best 3-point defenses in college basketball, then Syracuse probably is not going to cover that spread. Those are the things to look at.
Yep. Well, you guys listen to her. She knows her stuff. When you're getting into March Madness, look at 2 conferences, focus on that, and then definitely look at the matchups. Go to her for your props. She is the prop queen. You need to get a crown out there. You got the helmet. You got like a prop queen helmet, or like a helmet with a crown on it or something.
I don't know. I'm not that corny. I didn't even like calling myself that name until people told me I had to start doing it, or else someone else was going to steal it from me. So I ended up using it and calling myself that so people could not steal the name, which has worked. I really am not corny.
Well, I feel like you know, like everyone, it's kind of like saying she's the prop person, but like Queen's like Queen Bee type thing, like top dog with prop.
It's funny too. It caught on in my friend group. A lot of my friends now will just call me Queen. It's just like this weird thing. They'll just say Queen, and
they're non-betting friends though.
No, these are betting friends.
Oh, jeez.
These are betting friends.
But that's like also like people like out like in regular conversation. Oh, that's my queen. That's my queen. So now everyone can just refer to you. That's my queen in the betting world.
I guess so. I mean, it's just, it's really funny how it caught on. It started in maybe like 2020 after about a year. And I was sitting at home doing all my shows at home in COVID. I kept posting so many different social media videos because what else did I have to do? I was so bored quarantining all that time. I ended up, people kept calling me it. I didn't start it. So other people just kept coming on the show and they were saying, wow, you are like the prop queen. You know all this
I
stuff
like
about
it
prop,
though.
blah, blah, blah. Then it caught on.
It just caught on. So you weren't fully on board. You just kind of had to adapt to it.
No, I thought it was the corniest thing ever. Honestly, I really hated it for a while. I said, okay, this is getting like really weird.
No, you're not the type that wears like the crown and the sash on their birthday.
No, I tried cheerleading for 2 days and I hated it. I quit. Like, I'm not a happy, like bubbly. I mean, bubbly and happy maybe, but I'm just not this like, I'm not this kind of person that sits here and calls myself nicknames and cheers. I don't know. I'm way more of a, I don't know how to explain it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like now that I'm trying to picture you like wearing a crown and sash, it is just pretty comical. Like if I ever see that happening, I'm like, someone's holding you hostage. Like
hostage, or it was a great Halloween costume.
Yeah. Do you dress up for Halloween? I never.
No, I go to Aruba every year for Halloween.
Yeah, I usually just do the whole like this is a costume that's not a costume. Like
one time I wore a Yankees shirt and was like, I worked really hard. Yankees shirt, shorts, and high socks.
Yeah. I had a game on Halloween once and it was a blackout too. It was like a night game. And I was like, I'm not dressing up on the field. Absolutely not.
No, I go to Aruba usually every year for Halloween since I was about 5 years old. It's just when our timeshare panned out. I never really grew up much with Halloween because it was always Aruba over that. my mom was so grateful because she has kids that my sister actually loves Halloween, which is hilarious. She gets sad that we miss Halloween sometimes to go to Aruba, but I don't care. I go to Aruba, I say
like Halloween is your like that's your trip after like you have after the baseball season. That's when you take your trip. Usually after like the college football season or like now the NFL season too. It was the Super Bowl's like my trip, like the celebration of the season. Like that's the trip you go on. But yeah, all right. Well, have a fun time at the concert down south. Follow Ariel and all of her picks, Yahoo Sports, your new podcast out as well. What everything that can we find you on?
Make sure to go to my Twitter at Ariel Epstein or Yahoo Sportsbook's Twitter. We also have the Yahoo Sports app, which has everything on it from articles and all of our videos. So it's really informative and it's every sport you could imagine. We have analysts telling you how to bet and advice on betting in those sports.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was fun. So glad we were able to. I mean, we watch games and talk picks all the time, but it's fun to do it on the air for people. So appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. This has been Stephanie Otey, my girl Ariel Epstein, the prop queen. Kevin will be back on tomorrow. Come back here right here on Daily Insider, Vegas Insider. Follow the YouTube page, the playlist. Check out the new website. Let us know your thoughts on that. You can find everything on there. All of the media is now posted on the website. Just check it out. There's a lot of great changes. Get used to it. I know change is new. So check it out. Let us know your thoughts. Follow me at Steph Otey. Follow Vegas Insider HQ on Instagram. I'll be putting pics up there each day. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time. And good luck with your bets.